Hey guys, welcome to Boxing Squared for boxing news and views from around the internet. Derek Chisora vs Joseph Parker is now official, so it'll be headlining a May 1 card in the United Kingdom, and it will also feature Katie Taylor vs Natasha Jonas as the co-main event, and then you have Chris Eubank Jr. on the card as well, and also Dimitri Bivol will be defending his 175 title against Craig Richards. So as they're saying in the press release, it's a blockbuster May 1 card. And I got to say, there is quite a bit of name recognition and name value there, but blockbuster, I'm not so sure about that. But I think some people will be very interested in this card because obviously the mishmash of different fighters, different weight classes, a few different titles on the line. But for the main event, nothing big on the line, but obviously pride and probably quite a bit of money because this is going to be pay-per-view in the United Kingdom, New Zealand. Elsewhere, it's going to be mostly on DAZN, but it says it will be on DAZN, excluding the UK, Ireland, China, New Zealand, and Samoa. So the boxing fan in those countries will have to dig into their pocket for pay-per-view prices. But in terms of the main event, the quotes from Derek Chisora and Joseph Parker, we will start with Derek Chisora, who says, "We've been here before. In 2019, I flew to Las Vegas to film Face to Face with Parker. I called Hay as soon as I left and I told him, this guy isn't going to get in the ring with me. I could see the fear in his eyes. Now, second time around, I hope he fights. I'm looking forward to the fight. I cannot wait to get back in the ring. I love fighting. It is what I love the most. Good luck to Joseph Parker and his new team. We shall see you for War on May 1st. Then you have Joseph Parker saying, I'm excited to start this new chapter in my career with a new coach and some fresh ideas. I've settled in and Andy and I are bonding well. So that's Andy Lee, his new trainer. Chisora and I have unfinished business and inside the ring, one of us will get the job done. I'm well aware that a win on British soil and on a worldwide television will put me in pole position, whereas a loss will be catastrophic. I'm more than up for the challenge. Bring it on, Del Boy. So Parker and Chisora fighting May the 1st. And it's interesting that Derek Chisora is actually the A side in this fight, given he's got those 10 losses. But I guess it shows the value of the name recognition, the way that he fights, the entertainment that he brings. And let's face it, Joseph Parker, since racking up a couple of losses in 2018 to Dillian Whyte and Anthony Joshua, hasn't really done too much since. And actually, I got to say, I think this really is a make or break fight for Joseph Parker, a crossroads fight. Whereas for Chisora, I think you could sort of say he's always going to have that sort of gatekeeper, world level sort of position, I think, for as long as he wants it. He's been having these decent fights in recent years with a whole bundle of fighters getting paid really well, generally as the B side, but actually he's the listed A side in this one. So for a guy who sports a record of 32-10, he's put it all on the line and generally come up short at world level. He's done well for himself, and you've got to congratulate him for managing to eke out, a pretty decent career, at least financially, and obviously he's well liked and loved by fans. And Parker, he's got to win. He sort of says that this will sort of be catastrophic if he loses. And he's right, because he could be in a bit of a no man's land, because if he does lose, where does he go and who will want to voluntarily fight him? He'll have to try get into eliminators, and you could end up seeing a whole bunch of pretty much mostly nothing fights as he tries to reposition for another sort of crack at the world level. But win here, and he sort of had said that will rebound him into a whole bundle of good fights. Yeah, I think it just keeps his position of where he is. It doesn't necessarily guarantee him anything. And that's the thing at the moment. There's a bit of a logjam at the top of the division. Obviously, there's the talk of undisputed between Anthony Joshua and Tyson Fury. But if you're ranked high in other sanctioning bodies and you don't already have a mandatory shot booked, you're sort of on the outside looking in. And right now, Parker is on the outside looking in. And even with a win, he would still be on the outside looking in. But at least he would sort of maintain his position, at least be able to be Johnny on the spot for when something does pop up. So a win is a must here, but I think it's more than that. Remembering Joseph Parker, since those losses to White and Joshua, had a myriad of tune-ups, and then he's just recently fought Junior Farr in New Zealand, and it was a performance that wasn't that impressive. He got the win, and I don't think there was too much controversy about him winning. It was just more some of the scorecards were a bit wide and didn't really or necessarily reflect what a lot of people thought they saw, and I thought it was a much closer fight than those cards suggested. But Parker looked a bit uninterested, a little bit of out of ideas in that fight, and now he is split with Kevin Barry. But then you have in the background of all of this, it coming out that he fought for 2 years to keep his name out of the public, because in court a couple of years ago, the Crown in New Zealand had alleged that he was part of an international meth ring, that he was connected to it. So he lost his bid for name suppression. I think some of what's happened is sort of, or alleged to have happened, has taken people by surprise. But it's boxing. Boxing has a short memory. So if he can get a couple of wins and look good, all that sort of stuff just, sort of falls by the wayside. Boxing is the Wild West, the red light district, and things are often forgotten. Guys who've popped dirty for peds, etc. Often you forget that within a few years. Fans tend to forget quite quickly and move on. So if he's able to go in there and put in a good performance and beat a Derek Chisora, and for his sake, preferably by knockout, that'll go a long way to actually, building back up his image and profile. Because you got to say, in recent years, he sort of just drifted off people's radar, hadn't been fighting anyone interesting, and it had seemed that he's just eking his way back to a potential world title shot eventually. And I still think that even this fight, they were going for what looked to be the most lucrative, but out of fights he might be able to have, the sort of a fight he could have a good style matchup and potentially win it, as opposed to being in a fight where, it was a bad style matchup and he was more probably likely to lose. But this actually, based on form and what we've seen from Joseph Parker, is probably a lot closer than maybe we had thought even back in 2019. I certainly thought the style matchup, and I still do, is going to suit Joseph Parker, because you've got a guy in Derek Chisora who likes to come forward, let his hands go, but he doesn't necessarily cut the ring off that well, can tend to just follow, and, he can be hit, he can be hurt. Parker's the taller man with the bigger reach here. So it's going to be interesting to sort of see how Parker approaches this, especially with his new trainer. And as I say, I think it's probably based on form closer. And even some of the potential betting markets that had come out had this really close, where Parker was either a slight favourite on some books or a slight underdog on others. And I think pretty much, while it shouldn't be a 50-50, because Parker is more in the prime of his career, and Chisora, we know what he is, but who knows? We just really haven't seen too much from Joseph Parker in recent years. And if he can't look good in this fight, it will be interesting, the question of what's next. But in terms of this, you have to step back and go, most of Parker's wins and losses have been pretty controversial. In losses or wins, it's generally been quite close, tight, controversial decisions, etc. like that. So I would be picking that this one probably goes the distance. I'm not sure he's going to knock out a guy in Derek Chisora. Other guys haven't. Alexander Usyk, not a massive puncher, couldn't get him out of there. And Joseph Parker, from what we've seen at world level, does not have world level power. So Chisora is likely to be able to hang with him. It's just whether who's going to gain ascendancy in the fight. And I could easily see Parker winning some of the early rounds on the back of the jab movement. But it will be interesting to see what wrinkles Andy Lee is able to work into Joseph Parker's game, especially at only about 6 or 7 weeks before the fight, linking up with him, that sort of thing. So it might be just mostly what we've seen before from Joseph Parker, and probably mostly likely what we've seen from Derek Chisora. But because Chisora doesn't really want to sort of box with you, just wants to go in there and knock you out, throw a lot of punches, he just wants to track you down, seek and destroy. Probably going to be some more openings for Joseph Parker, and this is why I say the style matchup I think is going to be better for him. It's not as defensive as some of the guys that he's fought. Bearing in mind, say, Alex Leapai, for example, mostly just surviving, and Junior Farr, very defensive in that fight. So if someone's trying to survive and be negative, it is harder to really sort of break them down and get through. But I think there will be opportunities to hit and hurt Chisora. But similarly, Derek Chisora is able to land, I believe, on Joseph Parker as well. Parker's not unhittable, and I think we saw in that fight against Junior Farr was landing a number of good right hands, and if Chisora can land enough of them, and particularly as Joseph Parker, historically has tended to slow down in fights as they've worn on. He looks good pretty early on, and then he starts to sort of slow down through the mid rounds and then sort of finishes stronger. There are rounds to be won for a guy like Derek Chisora, and it could well go to a decision. And in terms of the rest of the card, some interesting names. I won't get into all of that. I don't do that on this channel, but I like the matchup, Chisora and Parker, and it is a pretty even fight based on what we've seen recently from both guys. And both guys need the win, Parker more so for his standing in the division, and because if he loses, where does he go? I think Chisora is pretty much, in good performances, even in losses, is always guaranteed another fight because he's a really good B-side. But what do you make of it all? Drop a comment loud and often. Hit like, hit subscribe. Follow me on Twitter, boxing_squared. I'm out.